What's up, and welcome back to another episode of Gizmo Slip Tech / live unboxing. We've got the Zephyrus Duo 16 with the Ryzen 9 7945. The dragons have landed. This has 16 cores, 32 threads in it. Super powerful. CPU performance, I believe we should be seeing top tier performance. I have done driver updates. I have done NVIDIA updates. I've done the latest BIOS update. We did the Windows update. Did I mention that? We updated a bunch of games, downloaded a bunch of games. I have not really touched this thing except for just installing stuff. And I repackaged it up for you guys for this live unboxing. And I'm super excited because basically, I mean, this thing is one of the most versatile and interesting laptop designs out there because of its dual display nature, right? It's an incredibly bright and vibrant QHD display, plus the secondary display, plus the since the secondary display lifts up at an angle that provides additional airflow into the chassis, and it provides really great performance for such a thin and light laptop. It's not really that light, but it's fairly light considering that you're getting double screens, which is it's just a nutty design, I think. So in today's video, we're going to be comparing this against some of the competition. What other laptops could you buy instead of this one for the money? We're going to be doing some benchmarking today. We've got some games installed, so we're going to try to do, I'm guessing, at least 7 games. I'm hoping like 10 games. If we have the time to go through 10 games, I'd like to do that. We're going to do Cinebench R23. We're going to do Timespy. We're going to take the bottom of the laptop off, see what the upgradability is like. And then we're going to check out the ports. We're going to check out the displays. We're going to test the displays with my Spyder 5 Elite. We're going to test the keyboard and the mouse, and I'm going to let you know about any chassis flex, and I'm going to give you my opinion on the build quality of the device. We're going to see if the device has a good response rate. It should have a good response rate, and I'm also curious to see today, if we have time, I'd like to load into Dying Light 2, which does have, I believe, integration for the secondary display functionality, so you can see like your character's inventory on the second display underneath. Yeah, so the big thing for today, though, is definitely that we have the Ryzen 9 7945HX, which is AMD's huge competitor to the Intel i9 CPUs. Now we have 16 big performance cores in this Ryzen 9 7945HX, 32 threads. So the same number of threads as the top i9 from Intel. Now the Intel i9 has 24 total cores and 32 threads, right? So 8 performance cores, 16 efficiency cores from Intel, and the multi-core rendering performance should be very competitive. I'm not sure about the gaming performance, and that's really what I'm going to focus on today. I want to do a live stream. I'm planning to do. That's going to be the next live stream. We're going to be doing a detailed performance side-by-side comparison with the i9 13980 HX and the Ryzen 9 7945HX in here. So we're going to do that in a future live stream. We're going to do some CPU benchmarks today, just basically Cinebench R23. And then we're going to do Timespy. We're going to see our Timespy CPU scores. But for the most part, we're going to focus mainly on seeing how the Dragon Range handles in video games today. And then in the next live stream, I'm planning on basically getting one of my i9 laptops. I'm thinking the GE78 HX or maybe the GT77. I'm not sure. We're going to set that sucker side by side, and we're going to run CPU benchmarks at the same time with the i9 and the Ryzen 7945HX. And we'll see what we get, right? We're going to see what kind of performance is possible. The biggest potential advantage for the AMD chip is just that it's made with a more efficient nanometer process. So that makes the chip overall more power efficient, which is partially why they can put 16 big fat performance cores in here, where Intel had to go to the efficiency cores to increase their core count. Asus did send me this laptop, so big shout out to Asus for sending this over for review. This is the secondary box. There is a bigger box that this came inside of. At least when Asus shipped it to me. I don't know how they're going to ship it to customers, but I'm pretty sure even this box would be perfectly safe to ship by itself because there's an internal box inside of here with foam packaging. So let's go ahead and take a look at that. So we've got the foam right here. And we got this secondary internal box, which is super interesting. Look at that guy. Isn't that a cool box design for the internal box design? It looks really sweet. Our power brick in here. And this is the same power brick that you get on the Scar 18, Strix G18. 330 watts. You can see it's a 330 watt power brick. It's not quite as small as what the Razer power brick is this year, but it is still much smaller than mini laptops like the MSI GT77 or the Alienware series. So it's kind of a middle level, premium level power brick, I think. But it's at least smaller than some of the laptops out there. Now this also had another box. Whoa, what is this? Oh. Okay, so this is the first time I've pulled this out, actually. This is a wrist rest. Interesting. Let's try this out. We're going to want to try this out today because that's one of the downsides of this laptop, I think, is there's no wrist rest because the keyboard's right up to the front. But this is a rubberized wrist rest, kind of soft rubber feel. It's kind of nice. I like that. Now we got to get the laptop out of the inner box. And let me get a close-up of this design here, because it is really cool, I think. I don't know, it's like a city or something with some cool designs. I don't know. It's cooler than most boxes these days. This? Yes. You open it like this. Now, I did have to put this back into the packaging, so the plastic wrap is not quite as pretty as it would be if it was brand new. So, seriously cool, surprisingly quiet, 15 degrees lower CPU temps because of the extreme conductonaut liquid metal. Maximized airflow with the raised screen display. It does have 0 dB ambient cooling in silent mode, supposedly. Anti-dust filter for improved longevity. I am going to go ahead and take this little sticker off of here now so we can see the laptop without it. There it is. It's got this nice kind of metal top lid here. So that's a metal top lid. Feels nice and premium. We've got this etching here. It's not an RGB logo or anything, but it's still pretty nice. So we've got this, also we have this holographic line going down the laptop here as well. So it's the same type of kind of purpley blue holographic metal. And then it's got this dot array on this side, which looks pretty cool. I wouldn't say it's amazing, but it looks pretty cool. All right. Going over the ports real quick. We have our headphone port. We've got a micro SD card slot, which is a little surprising. All right, so we got a fan exhaust, a power adapter port, USB-A, and then display port USB-C. I'm not sure if that's a USB 4 or not. Micro SD card slot, headset port. We do have ports on the back. We have an upward facing Ethernet port. I like that. We have another USB 3.2, HDMI 2.1. And then over here we have another USB-C. All right, so that's pretty sweet overall for the ports. It's the same ports as the Zephyrus like G16 lineup basically. 2 USB-Cs, 2 USB-As, a micro SD card slot, headset, Ethernet. I'm not sure does the Zephyrus have Ethernet? I think the Zephyrus might not have Ethernet. I think it might. Maybe. I can't remember. Either way, it's a decent selection of ports for a 16-inch chassis. And this thing is also amazingly thin for a dual display. That's the other thing. Like, I'm like, how do they manage to put 2 displays in this thing? Like, it's crazy that there's 2 displays. 1, 2. It's just kind of mind-blowing to me that this is a thing. Like, this is actually my first time using this laptop in person, and it's just so much more screen real estate than you normally get on a laptop. Before we continue, let's compare the laptop sizes versus some of the competition. So side by side, you can see how big or small the Zephyrus Duo 16 is. First up, we have the 18-inch Strix G18. I'll line that up on the front. You can see how much bigger that G18 is. It's got a pretty good amount of excess space on the 18 for sure. This is much more portable than the G18. Going down to 16-inch chassis sizes, this is the Alienware M16. And you can see this is actually a fair bit smaller than the M16 as well, though the M16 is a larger chassis that does have 4 M.2 slots inside of it, so it's a bit different design ethos. Then we have the Razer Blade 16. All right, the Razer Blade 16 is going to be the smaller one between these two. Basically the exact same width, but the Duo is about an inch longer or deeper right here. So the Blade 16 is the same size of display on the main display, and it does take the cake in terms of portability between these two. Here's the Razer power adapter. Razer power adapter versus the Duo power adapter. The Razer one is the best, thinnest design, smallest design overall this year. And the GT77 is the worst. This is what Alienware and MSI are using. This is what Asus is using on all the high-end laptops, and this is what Razer is using on all their high-end laptops. That's, I guess, the MSI the GE78HX does have a smaller power adapter, so it's one of those laptops that does have a little bit better power adapter size. Okay, time to open up this laptop. Okay. Interesting. We've got, looks like T5 screwdrivers are going to be required to open this. No, it might be a T6. No, it's T6. So you need a T6 Torx 6 screwdriver to open this up. I am going to use this toolkit to unlock this guy. There's a link in the description if you want to pick up this toolkit. But the big thing you need to know is you need a T6 Torx screwdriver head to be able to open this up. So it's a different type of screwdriver head, and if you don't have one, you won't be able to get this guy open. So that's the important thing to keep in mind. These screws are different sizes along this back row, which is interesting. And also, is this bottom metal? It feels like it might be metal bottom, like some kind of magnesium metal bottom. We've got another pop-up screw from Asus, so it's easy to pry this thing open. I love that. I love that so much after the last few laptops not having it. Into the AM shirts, by the way, everybody. They're high-quality shirts. If you're in the market for some clothes, 10% off link in the description. And it does help support the channel if you do buy any shirts through that link. So thank you very much for the support. Now, looks like we might have one more screw here because this thing's not coming up. So I think this is another screw hole cover. I don't know why any manufacturer does these little plastic rubbery screw hole thing covers for only one screw. Like all the other screw holes are like holes in the bottom, but this one screw's got to have a rubber cover on it to hide it or something. I don't know. It's just, it doesn't make any sense to me. Here's my laptop list, and you can search this list. On the left here, if you were to type in Duo, for example, and press enter, it would come up with the laptops that have the Duo in the name. You can see links to be able to pick these up right here. They're currently sold out on Newegg, though. So unless you pay for scalper pricing, which I wouldn't recommend, I would say just wait. I mean, you can pay scalper pricing if you want, but it's not recommended. We do not mark the laptops in stock with scalper pricing. I only mark the laptop in stock if it is regular pricing, or within like a little bit of regular pricing at least. All right, so the internal analysis, 90 watt hour battery, right? A left and right downward firing speakers. We've got an M.2 slot right here. DDR5 4800 megahertz RAM. That's like a no brand. There's no brand on it, which is a little disappointing. We have an empty M.2 slot here if you want to add a second M.2 slot, and that looks like it would fit a double-sided SSD, no problem. The default SSD also looks to be no brand. No, it's an SK Hynix SSD, and it is a 2 terabyte SSD that at least came in this unit. Now for our heat pipe system, we've got a quite extensive heat pipe layout, right? We've got all over the top here. We've got heat pipes going around this side. We've got heat pipes going around here, utilizing all 4 fan exhausts and heat fin areas, which is nice to see. But just keep in mind that this only has 2 fans. But the reason, part of the reason at least why this thermal design is really good is because it does suck air in from under the secondary display that pops up. So basically it's almost like the internals here have really good airflow, better airflow than most laptops. Like think about kind of like how a 16-inch chassis might perform if it had a laptop cooler underneath it. Well, this is kind of like that in the sense that like the chassis design itself automatically enhances the airflow that goes in and out of this chassis. Now, there are also a number of foam risers in this thermal design, and this is designed to isolate and keep the heat going in certain areas. It looks like this one, this little riser or cable came unglued, it appears. I don't think it really matters that much, but yeah. There's more foam right here. The goal of the foam, okay, is to direct the airflow so the hot areas don't go into the fan. We want cooler air going into the fans and then being blown out of the fin exhausts. So they want to prevent air coming from the CPU and GPU. The center of the laptop is going to be really hot, so they try to isolate that airflow away from the fan intakes. Overall, for a 16-inch laptop, I think this is a really good thermal design in general. I love the dedicated VRM heat pipe going around right here. And then I like that we have dedicated heat pipes right here and right here going around. Overall, I think this is going to be some really great thermal performance for a laptop of this size. I don't know if the temps might get still really spicy at times. I wouldn't be surprised to see 95 degrees on the CPU because it is a high wattage CPU. But I think the GPU temps are going to be really good because we also have that liquid metal conduct and not extreme. As long as the application is good, we should have some good temps overall for this system. This Zephyrus Duo is pretty easy to take apart because of how they designed the pop-up screw and the fact that all the sides are very easy to manipulate to lift up and take down. Okay, yeah, so now the laptop's turning on just fine. I may have busted the power adapter dropping it on concrete. Yeah, I'm guessing that's what happened, but you can see right here on the cable where I dropped it. Kind of hit right there. I don't know. It may be that I damaged it, or maybe I don't know. Might have to pay Asus for a new power adapter though. Whew. Isn't that gorgeous? Like the way this works, like this whole setup is just awesome. When you add this wrist rest there, oh, that helps. That makes this thing feel a lot better from a usability standpoint. It's just, you are sitting pretty far back from the display though. That's probably the only thing. Starting in the right side by the touchpad, a little bit of flex, like basically it feels like I'm pressing down the rubber bottom. It doesn't feel like the chassis is flexing. It feels like the rubber bottom is going down a little bit. Of course, the touchpad has some flex to it because you're pressing the touchpad down, but minimal flex overall, minimal flex, very rigid feeling. Going through the middle of the keyboard, a little bit more flex here, but nothing crazy. It's very reasonable levels of flex. Let's go to let's go. I'm gonna try pushing a little bit up on this the secondary screen here. I'm gonna apply too much pressure. At least at first. Let me see. Okay. Oh, this is a touch screen. Do you guys see that? I'm actually touching the screen here. There is some flex on this screen, but in theory, you're not gonna press on this screen very much. But at least this is cool that it's a touchpad. You need to provide the app authorization. The design style has been automatically updated. You can try new features. Go explore. Screen pad plus battery saver. Lower screen pad brightness in battery saver mode. You have a help center, Windows control panel. So brightness, background, theme, and resolution. I believe this is like a half of a 4K panel in terms of resolution. So it's a very high resolution touch display here. From my understanding, I think you can use a stylus with this if you get the right kind of stylus. So you could use this for drawing. I don't know if the drawing would be as accurate as like a professional drawing pad. Probably not, but it would still let you do drawing on here with a stylus. And yeah, you can switch windows between these two screens. So let me try doing that. All right. So here's a Windows Explorer window, and boom, I just put it down here. I'll put it on the right side. Man, you know what I'm thinking would be so useful with this? Imagine if I had like Armory crate down here, and then you could see your like CPU GPU stats as you play games maybe. You know, and then you got maybe like my streaming chat window, like chat right now. I could put the chat window down here and have my main display showing the preview of what I'm streaming up on the main window, but I could still interact with chat at all times and see the display. That'd be pretty sweet. I'd like that. It would be usable as like a quick reference, touch, open a file, check data, whatever type of a window. All right, now this display up here at the top is it's supposed to be a QHD plus, I believe, 1100 nits HDR display. So incredibly bright and vibrant. This right here slides forward and then down. So as it closes, it slides forward and then goes flat. Comes up, opens up the air underneath here, so more air intake for the fans. Let's see if we can get a shot looking down inside of here. It's kind of, let me try pointing my camera right down in there. You can see the fan intakes right there, a little bit further in. But basically, there's fan intakes with air filters right there. I believe the air filters are an addition. I don't think they used to have the air filters, and so they would get a bit dirty. The fans would get a little dirtier than Asus wanted them to be, so they they started putting air filters on them. So good for Asus, I guess. They've definitely, it's a good idea to add that. All right, so here's an HDR video with this display. Let's take a look at this. And we are at max brightness right now. I might have to down the brightness on my camera a little bit so that it doesn't overexpose. But look at the color quality and color gamut of this display. It is really good. Like the colors, the details, the blacks, the contrast. It's really impressive. Another color example. And of course, I'm capturing this through my camera, right? So the camera may not exactly depict the colors, but it looks pretty dang close to what I'm seeing on the display. It is an incredibly vibrant and colorful display. Yeah, I'm not seeing any backlight bleed to this whatsoever in the corners or anything. We do get a little bit of bloom around the mouse. I'm pretty sure you guys can see that. The mouse in the top right corner there. We're getting just a little bit of bloom around that. I'm not seeing literally zero backlight bleed, completely high levels of contrast. Phenomenal. Phenomenal. It's just like the GT77's mini LED display that had no backlight bleed. It was completely crisp image with high levels of contrast and dark blacks. So here we are. Windows Hello is a thing. All right, so found me so fast. Perfect. Windows Hello working well. Once again, I must mention my Spyder 5 Elite underestimates the color gamut by a little bit. Varies, but between 7, 8, 9, 10%. I'm guessing most of the time it's like 8 or 9%. So looking at our numbers, you can see we got 100% of sRGB coverage, 92% Adobe RGB, 92% of the P3 color gamut, and that is excellent. That is very, very good. Let's see what our brightness numbers were. 47 nits bright on the lowest setting. That is not that dim. Being honest with you, that's not that dim. So if you're trying to use that in your bed at night, it may be a little bright for some people, but it depends on the person. 25% 114, 50% was 196, 75% was 578 nits, and at maximum brightness 1019 nits. Whoo, doggy. That is a very bright display. Holy schmoly. And our contrast ratio is also supremely excellent because of our mini LED display giving us exceptionally black blacks. And so 78,420 to 1. This is an exceptionally phenomenal display from a color gamut, contrast, and brightness perspective. Like right now, this is basically the best display I've ever tested in my life. Interesting, inside of Windows here, you can see how they've got the displays set up. It's in a vertical display orientation, so you can drag stuff straight down from the top display right into the bottom display. And if I click on the second display, you can see the resolution is 2560 by 734. So 2560 wide by 734. That's going to be the same horizontal resolution as what we have up above. So I like that. That is nice that it's the same resolution. That's going to help provide parity when you're using applications between the top and bottom displays. And yes, this is a 16 by 10 aspect ratio display. You can see we're at 2560 by 1600. What I was going to show you is the Dolby Access software here. We have dynamic, game, movie, music, voice, and you can custom EQ setup. And we're going to do dynamic for our audio test. All right, so about 10 inches in front, Roar by Peter Spacey. So we're not getting any sound to come through. An unexpected error has occurred. Troubleshooting wizard cannot continue. What are all these errors? Let's go with just a computer restart. All right, we're going to try turning it off and turning it back on again, and maybe that's going to fix our problem. I'm going to hold the mic about 10 inches in front of the laptop and Roar by Peter Spacey. Very nice. This is Faded Aeon Half-Life. And then the last one here we're going to do is La 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 by Deuce Williams.
I love you like la 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 la. I love you like la 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 la. I love you like la 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 la. I love you like la la.
And I also really want to quickly test. I want to try doing the Dolby Atmos again and change the settings here. And we're just going to try a couple of different modes to see what they sound like while we're playing the same song again. We'll do Roar by Peter Spacey, see what it sounds like. Yeah, so I would give these speakers probably like, basically, I think they match very similarly to what like the Scar 18 does. So I would say they're like 8.7, 8.8 in that ballpark. Right around what the Blade 16, maybe just a hair under what the Blade 16 or very close to what the Blade 16 has. Not quite as good as what the Blade 18 has, but it's not too far off from the Blade 18. In terms of total volume, I feel like the bass is not quite as punchy in there compared to the Blade. And I don't think this is going to have as good a spatial audio as well. So that's part of the ratings for those high ends. I mean, that's perfectly doable. I just probably wouldn't want to type for like 8 hours a day like this. You know, this is not ideal. The wrist rest, though, I could type 8 hours a day like this. This would be great. If you're just going to type a little bit, it's not a problem, I think, not having the wrist rest there, though. The bigger question is, can you type with it in your lap? And that's probably where I think where this keyboard's the biggest weakness is. All right, you guys get to see all the laptops over there in the corner. I mean, you can do it. You can do this, but it feels weird not having anything to put the wrists on. I don't know. I definitely, if you're going to use the laptop mainly in your lap, which most gaming laptops are not used that way, but if you're going to mainly use it in your lap, then it's probably not ideal. You probably want to have this most of the time on a table surface, especially if you do a lot of typing. You know, you can make it work in a pinch on your lap, but it's not that great of an experience in my opinion. So manual fan mode. I guess let's go over Armory Crate as we do this, so you can, anyone who's not familiar with Armory Crate can get a better idea about it. This is the software that Asus uses for configuring your laptop. Now, you get 4 primary modes. You get Windows. Well, you don't get Windows. I guess if you do Windows, you end up using just the power profiles that Windows has, which is, we're not going to do that. You have Silent, Performance, Turbo, and Manual. Now, Silent, Performance, and Turbo are presets from Asus. If you do use those, they will work fine. Note that the Silent and Performance mode will be much quieter. Like Silent mode will be exceptionally quiet. The fans will be running at very low RPMs to keep them quiet. And Performance is going to be drastically reduced. Performance mode is going to be a little bit louder. It'll be like more of a gentle whoosh to the fans. And not be that noticeable. So that's good if you're going to play like a video game with the regular speakers. Turbo mode is going to be very loud fans, close to max fans, if not exactly max fans, depending on the load. It'll go all the way up to max fans. And then in manual fan mode, there is a fan profile curve editor here that you can set to basically say at different temperatures, you want the fans to go up to XYZ levels of fan speed. And for this test, what we're going to do is maximum fan speed, which means we're going to set the fans to go at 100% fan speed no matter what. And then for our CPU, we've got the slider pushed all the way up to max, which is 125. It shows 130, but this doesn't go to, oh, there it goes. Now it goes to 130. Okay, so we're at 130 for our power limits across all of this. The short and long power limits are up to 130 now, okay? So that's going to be like maximum possible performance on the CPU. And if you're going to go for maximum performance, you do need to be in manual mode because turbo mode does not go as high. I think it stops a little bit lower. Is this laptop better than the Scar 16? We're going to find out. It's definitely got some advantages over the Scar 16, such as the dual display, which gives you more functionality, right? All right, so for the GPU, we have a base overclock of 50 for our clock speed and 100 for our memory, and that comes stock baked into the Asus Armory Crate. Pretty much every laptop's going to be able to overclock this much, so we're going to leave it at that. Now we're going to activate manual fan mode. All right, and now we're going to open up Cinebench R23, and I'm sure that white display is just blinding right now. I guess let me show you a couple other things here in Armory Crate before we actually run Cinebench. So along the right side, you can see we've got GPU mode, which is ultimate or standard mode right now. Standard mode will basically utilize GPU switching to turn off and on the integrated GPU to save battery life. Ultimate mode disables the integrated GPU to just do dedicated mode for maximum possible performance while slight reducing the demand the integrated GPU would have brought onto the CPU, all right? I have not heard any coil whine on this laptop yet. Under load, I'm sure any coil whine would be absorbed by the fan noise, but if you are running in silent mode, you might hear a coil whine. We'll have to see. I haven't heard any coil whine yet. They also offer some additional configuration options like activating or deactivating the ROG key on the keyboard. There's a touchpad you can disable, a boot up sound you can turn on and off, panel overdrive to increase the response rate of the 240 hertz display. You can turn off the touchscreen aspect of the second display, and you've got panel power saver and the num lock. So going over the keyboard as well, as we get right before we get into this, let's just show you what I'm talking about when they give you the option to disable the touchpad. So if you press and hold up here on the top left, look at that. It pops up with a number pad. It's not very bright with my direct studio lights on the touchpad, but I can see it pretty well. The number pad there gives you the numbers and key functionalities for plus, minus, divide, all of that. And it's in a nice spot right where you normally would have a number pad. So if you're using an external mouse, you can use this number pad. You can deactivate and activate the number pad just by pressing in the top left. And then the ROG key right here launches Armory Crate, allows you to turn off and on the secondary screen. So this enables or disables this button, the secondary screen here. This turns the arrow keys into page up, page down keys. Interesting. And then the power button is right here on the right. So it's a very interesting key layout. Let me go up a little bit more. Overall, this keyboard layout is the same as the other Zephyrus laptops, and it feels good with home and page up downs on the arrow keys for secondary functions, delete key, airplane mode, keyboard backlight brightness, turning on and off the touchpad, brightness up and down for your monitors. On the left side, we have volume up and down and mute, microphone mute, fan mode, hotkey. And other than that, we have everything else is pretty standard. I think the backlight could be a little brighter. I don't think this is quite as bright and as vibrant as what you get on like the Blade 18 or Scar 18 or even the Omen 17 had more vibrant backlighting. This is basically similar backlighting to like the Strix G18, Scar 18. It's not super bright. I think Asus needs to upgrade their backlighting to be more competitive now. Here we go. Multi-core render. What do we get? We're pushing 4.7 gigahertz across all the cores. Our wattages, we're doing 127 watts of power, 127.8 watts of power. Not quite to the 130 watts that we set the power limit to, but still very close to what we asked it to do. 34,219. That's phenomenal, especially for an out-of-the-box experience. All right, man, that is phenomenal. Now the question is, what's the performance going to be like with a 10-minute test? Because a 10-minute test is a lot more grueling. Let's go ahead and do 5 runs back to back and see if we have any performance degradation, and then we'll do a 10-minute test. 34,855 that run. Now, the thing about the i9-13980HK or HX, sorry, is that it is undervoltable. And in a chassis that can push higher enough wattages, we were seeing higher scores than this with undervolting. Okay, so we were getting like 36, 35,000 in some of the i9 chips, but that's only with tweaking. This is out of the box performance with only tweaking, I guess, in the manual fan mode, raising the power limits up to 130. 34,615. What are our temperatures at right now? Oh my goodness, our temperatures are at, oh, that's the GPU. Okay, the GPU's at 60. I was like, holy crap, the GPU's at 60. No, we've got 88 degrees right now on our CPU. So our temperatures are not like amazing, but they're pretty good. They're not thermal throttling right now. 33,365. How about we do one run on each of the power modes? All right, so we're gonna do silent first. That's gonna reduce our fan noise drastically, but it's also gonna drastically cut into our performance and all of that. So in silent mode, we are doing 82 watts. That's still pretty good. 66 watts. Let's see what the longer, like, you know, if it's in silent mode for a while, it might have to thermal throttle or something. But right now it's doing 66 watts. It's holding at 66 watts. That's going to give us decent performance in silent mode. And I can't hear the fans at all now. 27,800 in completely silent mode. I'll do it one more time just to verify. 27,912. You guys can see that? It's so dark now. All right, so 27,900 for silent mode. That's really good. Let's go to performance mode. 27,000 is still good. Yes, that's excellent for a silent mode. I mean, I could not hear the fans at all. It was completely quiet. And it was still pulling 66 watts through the CPU. 92 watts in performance mode. It's It's definitely going to be higher clock speeds in performance mode than silent. 31,249. If we go to turbo mode, this should be basically full performance or almost full performance from what we get in manual, but it should be a little bit lower wattage, like 125 or like 120 or something. So our wattage is like 127. Okay, so it's the same wattage in turbo and manual, apparently, in manual fan mode. So we got 32,978 for our turbo mode. Let's go to manual fan mode. You can hear the fans are not quite as loud. When I go to manual fans, you'll hear the fans kind of spin up a little louder. So I'm activating manual fan now. And I kind of wish the fans were a little less whistly. They're like kind of like a little like, you know how like the wind whistles through like slats? Some of the fans kind of have more of a whistly sound, and these are definitely a little more whistly. It reminds me of the audio that you get with the GT77. It's about as loud as the GT77 fan noise-wise, like probably around 60 decibels with max fans. Certainly louder than your typical. All right, so we're doing our 10-minute test, and we'll see what we get. I just reset HW info, so we're going to get fresh averages for our temperatures, our power limits, and our clock speeds. We're currently doing 4.7 and 4.6 across all 16 cores. Phenomenal. Show us the temps? Sure. Let's go down to some temps and wattage averages. We are doing 90 degrees on average, 92 degrees right now. Our package power is still averaging, well, it's averaging 125 watts. Even though we set it to 130, I think the 125 should be pretty good, or is pretty good. It's typical to average a little less than what you're actually getting, because the Cinebench R23 has these little pauses in it, and it drops the voltage down a little. I'll just scroll through this all the way up and down for you, anyone that wants to see anything that's in here. Now you guys should be able to see temps and clock speed at the same time, if I've got the window set up correctly here. So right now we're averaging around 4.5 gigahertz to 4.6 gigahertz. Some of these top cores, interestingly enough, these top cores are doing more like 4.6. The bottom 8 are doing 4.5, but that's still really phenomenal clock speeds. So the temperatures are pretty warm. We're pushing this CPU as far as it can go. Pretty close to it at least. 93 degrees Celsius. I don't think that's thermal throttle temperatures. I believe thermal throttle is going to be 95, but maybe we haven't seen anything higher than 93 yet, so. Okay, looking at our CPU package power, it's dropping below 125 now. We're only doing 108, 115. On our CPU package power. That's lowering our average down. And notice our clock speeds are also dropping down from 4.6, 4.7. Now it's 4.5, 4.4. So our clock speeds went down just a little bit over time. Our CPU temperatures are a bit better now. We're at 86 degrees going down with these slightly lower power limits. So just lowering the power limit a little bit really gave us some nice drop in temps. All right, so we averaged 122 watts for the whole run. We definitely dropped our power limit near the end there. 4.6 gigahertz on some of the cores, 4.4 to 4.6 gigahertz on the cores. 33,886 for our 10-minute score. Whoo, doggy. For a 10-minute score, that is phenomenal for a stock score. Absolutely phenomenal. So in terms of at least multi-core workloads, this Ryzen 9 7945HX should be a phenomenal CPU. Better than an i9, at least stock out of the box for multi-core workloads. But now we got to find out how it does in games. We got to do a couple more R23 runs. People are wanting to know a couple more things. First up, we're going to run unplugged. I've unplugged the laptop now. And we're going to be in performance mode, which is the highest performance mode you have when you're unplugged. Let's try running Cinebench R23 in a run here. So we got 16,950. 16,950. That's our run for battery life for at least a single run. We'll do one more test. Just get the right number up there. So again, 34,323. The highest single core was like 34,800, I think. Let's go ahead and do a single core run. Can we see the clock speeds? Yeah, let's pull up the clock speeds. See what we're getting for our single core clock speed right now. So right now we're pulling 5.4 gigahertz on core cores 0 through 6, 5.4. And our power limit right now is just 50 watts on the CPU. Our temperature is obviously low, only running a single core. So 5.4 though. So there's our single run scores right there. Pretty dang good. I think that is behind what the i9 does though. I believe the i9 does a little bit more than that. Look at those temps. Our temps are phenomenal. We're just getting started, but they didn't spike up very high at all. Our wattages, you know, a little disappointing we're not hitting closer to 175 on our GPU wattage level here. We are at least doing over 2,000 megahertz on the clock, for the GPU clock. Now we're doing 175. That's a little better. Makes me wonder if we shouldn't rerun this. Okay, so we got 21,429. Our CPU score is a lot lower than the Intel i9. The i9 chip was doing closer to 16,000 in Timespy. So keep that in mind. This is not probably going to be as good as gaming CPU as what the i9 is. 21,429 though. That's with no overclock. And that was with, I believe, something interrupting the performance at the beginning. So I'm going to run it one more time. All right, so now we're doing 174 watts on the GPU nonstop. We should get a little better score this time. So, okay, so looking at our temps right now, 72 degrees on our temps is a little higher than what we're seeing at some of these other laptops that are 175 watt, but that's still good enough. Very good overall. Our wattages were good. Our clock speeds were good, but it's only 2,000. We're only a little over 2,000 on our clock speeds. So that means that the RTX 4090 in this laptop does not have much of a factory overclock applied. So 21,460, 12,800. So that's very good. Let's try a 225. We'll try a 225 1000. This is a bit of an aggressive overclock, but it should be close to the peak of what this thing might be able to do. I'd love to see a score over 22,000 for our GPU score, but we'll see if we're stable or not. Okay, so let's see if we're stable. Right now, our clock speeds are much higher. We're getting closer to 2,200, over 2,200 at times. Obviously, Timespy Extreme would be more GPU bound. All right, so we got 21,910. CPU score stayed about the same, 12,800. Well, I guess we also got to do Port Royale. Let's do Port Royale. And we should take our overclock back down to the factory overclock of 5,100. 13,787. That's an excellent Port Royale Port Royale result. Full screen, HDR mode. It doesn't let me enable it. That's interesting. Frame generation, we want that on quality, and we want everything else set to ultra. Let's just make sure it's ray tracing ultra. Yep. I can hear the fans just a little whistle, very little. Notice our performance levels drop drastically here. Our temps are good. Our wattages are much lower now.
On your toes. More bodies incoming. They're almost on you. Scavs are still crawling. Clean it up, clean it out. You don't want to be bringing the target out under fire. And definitely don't want a slug in your back.
All you got? No way. Not neither.
It's hard to aim this pistol with iron sights.
What? Where? Fuck!
Yeah, this is gonna be a great audio experience.
Rookie's in, looks out on the balcony. Don't see any movement on the sensors. Looks like you got him.
Okay, so that's gonna make a great audio experience, right? If you're trying to play a game where you want to have the maximum possible audio experience, like I couldn't really hear the fans at all once the gameplay started. Now, in types of lulls in between the gameplay going on, you're definitely going to maybe hear the fans just a little bit. So let me try silent mode real quick. Just put it in there and see what kind of power limits we get. out of it.
Clear to go.
Shit, where the hell's our target?
Look around.
Okay, so our power limits now, the CPU is now 10 watts lower at 35, doing 113 watts. Now the fans are completely quiet. I don't hear them at all. No fan noise. So I just reset it. Still enough performance to be able to play this game well at 98 FPS. This is definitely a great laptop as far as if you want something quiet to play games with. You're not going to get the maximum possible performance out of it if you don't have headphones and whatever. Like we just jumped up 25, 30 FPS when we went back to manual mode. So you lose about 30% of performance to go into quiet mode, basically. 135. Holy shamoly. Oh, DLSS is on auto. How did it get switched to auto? That does not count. That does not count. Does not count. Well, it counts, but basically it only counts as DLSS on auto. Okay, now this is much more in line with what I was expecting, okay? I was expecting a little bit less performance than what we're getting with Intel, or at least, or maybe just like straight competitive. And right now we're looking like we're gonna basically match or maybe slightly beat the Scar 18 and get close to what the GT77 got. The other scores, so the other laptops, I'll show you guys the graph here in a moment. But the other laptops, the Scar 18 got 116 average. Right now we're averaging 111 according to this, the Afterburner counter, but Cyberpunk counts it a little higher than that. So 123.8, which is very similar to what we got on the Blade 18 and Omen 17. Both of those did about that. And now we do have DLSS on quality. So that is phenomenal. DLSS, we're going to set to quality. We're going to set everything to ultra settings for our presets. All right, we're at QHD plus, 240 hertz with now no VSync, typically. CPU's on a fryer right now. Holy crap, we are doing 100 degrees non-stop. Just looking at our watts right now, we are hitting very high GPU utilization, 91%. We had 100% a second ago. 98. Our CPU temps, well, they're coming back down now. What the heck, though? We had 100 degrees nonstop for a moment there. Oh, wow. When we look this way, look at our wattage pull and our temps. All right. And when we look this way, is our wattage coming back down? What is up with this? We're seeing some crazy high wattage levels. Yeah. All right. Well, let's try going into Armory Crate here. Let's try setting the maximum power limit to 90. Oh, look, now we're only doing 92, 91. It's going a little above 90, but at least we're not 100 degrees Celsius nonstop. Let's try lowering it down to 80. So now we're doing 80 watts on our CPU, and our temperatures are not frying. They're not 100 degrees nonstop anymore. If this was my laptop, this is how I would test it, okay? But we're testing it at max, okay? We're testing it. We're testing it the way we're testing it all the way balls to the wall, all right? Can you undervolt for better temps? Not sure, Ridzawan, yet. We haven't. I'm gonna try to get to the bottom of that before the next live stream that I do. How do I calculate dB fan noise? I calculate it with an external recorder tool about a foot in front of the laptop, and I would say that this laptop noise is about 60 decibels. It's very, very loud fans and max fans. So our temperatures were better mostly. 106.31, and jumping over to our benchmark chart, you can see on dead space, we got 112 on the Scar, 130 on the GT77, and like the Omen and Blade 18 got in between these two in the 120s, I think. So this is significantly below what the Intel i9 processor is doing in this game. All right, not to mention the temperatures are shabonga nanga longa wanga bing bong high. All right, so yeah, I wouldn't run my laptop like this all the time if possible. All right, high quality ray tracing, full screen, QHD plus, VSync off, NVIDIA Reflex on, DLSS on quality is what we want, and we want frame generation on. This is how we're testing the game, and we are going to try going into a single player mode with this as well. and seeing what it's like using the second display to game on. Though this might be the only game that has the support. I'm not sure how many games have this dual monitor support, but Dying Light 2 is a very interesting game because it has that, supposedly. So our FPS is excellent to start out with, over 140. Our CPU wattage draw in this game is very low at only 35. This is like the lowest CPU wattage we've seen. Very high GPU utilization still, so we're not being CPU bound, and yet we're doing low wattage. This bodes really, really well for the Ryzen chip in this game. Our CPU performance is really great in this game, and our temperatures are also phenomenal. This is a much better showing than Dead Space was for this Ryzen 9 7945HX. A big difference here. Okay, so I saw 140, I believe it was 145, but let me double check. 144, yeah, it is 144. Okay, so very impressive results with Dying Light 2. Dying Light 2, yeah, we had 128 with the GT77 and 138 for the Scar 18. And here we got 144. Fantastic. That's much better. Overall performance on this Ryzen chip. I believe we were getting about 144 on the Omen 17 and Blade 18, in that ballpark. They were both above 140 as well. So the game performed better. Yes, we got it. We got it. That's easy. Okay, that was easy. That was way easier than I thought it was going to be. It's not really like it's like just like literally 10 FPS right now. Need to restart the game? Okay, well, we're going to go ahead and try restarting the game then. It is such a cool feature. I totally agree. I just wish it was working properly right now. It is running this game now on the AMD integrated GPU. I couldn't focus it in time, but that's definitely the issue, okay? We are definitely struggling right now because of the AMD integrated GPU taking things over. Ultra settings. Very good. Okay, we are, wow. Very good FPS. 139 average so far to start out with. Well, it was Niebuhr says it wasn't an iGPU problem, a software problem. Absolutely. It was a iGPU software problem. It was a combination of software and the fact that the iGPU is still active or activating when it shouldn't be. So it's a combination. Does the Strix Scar 16 use the same panel as the Duo 16? I believe it does. So it should be similar levels of color, brightness, and contrast. All right, wow. So this is really good performance. The Scar 18, let's see if we can get Far Cry 5. So Far Cry 5, we got 150. And here we got 136. So this is definitely a game that favors Intel a little bit more, but it's still, it's not like grossly, terribly behind. I mean, what is that, like 10% or 11% or something? DLSS on quality. We're going to go graphics, everything set to ultra. Shabam. All right, so in this game, we're looking for a GPU. We want 100% GPU utilization, and as far as performance goes, we're looking for around 120 FPS approximately, give or take a little bit. The Scar did 116, and the GT77 did 124. So I'm hoping that we go a little bit above what the Scar 18 did. 121.67. So just a little bit higher than the Scar, a little bit below the GT77. All right. One thing I'll say is in GPU focused games, I'm loving the low wattage draw that this CPU is pulling so far. I would love it if, so what I would love, Don, is if they just made it so, I don't know. I would love this kind of dual screen implementation in more laptops. I just feel like in order to make it a thing, there's still some more optimization that could occur. I'm not sure how yet, but I still feel like this could be better. The implementation could be better. Like they could tilt the screen up more towards the user. they could make the screen have narrower bezels and then give, you know, give more wrist rest, something for your wrist to rest on. A possibility. I don't know. You know, so if they reduce the bezels on the second screen and then scoot it up more and then give us like 2 inches of wrist rest, maybe, I think that's possible. And then I feel like that would make the overall usability of this laptop much better. Okay, looking at our analysis of the Ryzen chip in this game, we're getting very high GPU utilization, but not quite 100%. 45 watts of GPU utilization in this game. Our temperatures are excellent. 66 watts of CPU utilization there. So we are getting some CPU utilization. We're getting not quite perfect GPU utilization. It's interesting. Performance is still good overall. It's still very good overall. I'm curious what our average for the whole run's going to be. You know, we've seen RTX 4090s pull between 150 to 169 frames per second in this game. So I'm hoping that we're going to see at least 150 for our average. Right now, we're only doing 130, 135 or something like that. So we're relying on other parts of the benchmark to boost our average a little higher. 153. Okay, perfect. Well, that matches the i9 for performance overall. Not quite what we saw in the GT77 doing 169 here, but it is better than the Scar did 151. That's an acceptable performance, I think. And really, that's kind of what I'm trying to get from this. Like, I want to see, like, we already saw that we get at least better multi-core rendering performance with the Ryzen chip in Cinebench R23. We'll have to see if that same performance translates to better render times and things like Handbrake or other video rendering tasks or other CPU tasks. But the bigger question then becomes, like, if you can get higher multi-core performance, do you also get at least the same gameplay performance? Is it a little bit less? Is it a little bit more? Right now, so far, my impression seems to be that it's a little bit less gameplay performance, at least in most of the games we've tested so far. So we're doing ray tracing on Ultra. DLSS, we're going to set to quality. For our display, we're going to do frame generation enabled, QHD+. We are running. Our 1% lows are stuttering pretty bad. I feel like a little worse than normal, but I guess now they're going back up to 56. That's better. Witcher 3 is just an oddly stuttering game at times. Ooh, that's very bad. Our GPU utilization is dropping. Our CPU, oh, it's, ooh, what's going on? This is not good, y'all. This is not good. Ooh, we're going to restart this run. See if we run into that issue again. That was weird. Ooh, we're getting oddly more stuttering than I've seen on any of the Intel laptops so far. So I don't know if that's related to the Ryzen chip or what. Something's going on though. If it's trying to load in textures or areas, it seems to be happening mainly in areas where we haven't ran in there before. So we're starting this sucker again, seeing if we can have proper performance. It's interesting that we ran into that stuttering. That's better. All right. Is there any bloatware pre-installed? Yeah, there's some bloatware pre-installed, like Dolby Atmos and some other stuff, but it's not as atrocious as what some laptop men. Like, I think the Omen had the worst bloatware. 112.58 QHD+, DLSS on quality, frame generation enabled. Everything on Ultra. We should probably set our textures to low because that's how we've been testing other laptops. But everything's on Ultra except textures. We don't really need to set our textures to low. Interesting that the textures had to low it in there. So as you can see, we're not stuttering. We're using 22 gigs of RAM. I'm going to go ahead and reset this counter here so we can see our 1% lows for a minute as I run around. But very, very smooth performance. Our Ryzen chip is getting hotter at 91 degrees Celsius, just right here at the outset of this test. We did get a stutter there where you can see some deer over there. Here we are. Our 1% lows are actually not too bad. We're pulling a good amount of wattage. Do you see that? We're doing 88 watts to the CPU, but it is hot, over 90 degrees temperature. Yeah, we're doing 5.2 gigahertz, at least on one of the cores. I'm not sure how many. All right, so we got everything loaded in. I gotta say, the 1% stutters are not too bad. They're pretty bearable right now. They're occasionally coming in, but not a huge difference between this and the Intel chips. We were doing over 100 FPS on average in this test, though, with, I believe, the Blade. I have to double check the stream. I'm curious what we got. I know the GT77 struggled in this test. It only did like 70 something. I think the Scar 18 got 93 in this run. And shabam. So we got 96, 32. That's pretty good for our 1% lows. Our temps are a bit hot though. I would probably, in general, if I was playing games, I wanted to lower the temps a little, I would just set my CPU max TDP to like 75 probably. And you wouldn't run into these hot temps anymore. All right, so we are in maximum settings right now. So high settings. Okay, I had to change my sensitivity. It was not the right sensitivity. Primarily, we're looking at the FPS, and our FPS is excellent right now. All right. And the responsiveness of the display is truly very fast with no ghosting at all, pretty much. This is probably equal to the best display for gaming that you can get, or very close to it, unless you go up to like a higher refresh rate, like a 360 or 480 refresh rate display. Very impressive results overall. Let's go ahead and switch everything to low now. And our goal when switching everything to low is to see if we can push the full 300 frames per second in the game. All right, so here we are. We got, oh, I can see it. I can see the smoothness. It just got a little smoother. I love it. And we are basically doing 300 frames per second nonstop now. Wow, our CPU temp is pretty spicy though. You guys see that? 95 degrees on the CPU. I was focused on aiming and I didn't notice. We're definitely getting some spicy CPU temps. I mean, that's not going to be dangerous necessarily for the CPU. But once again, I would probably rather have a little bit lower CPU temps. So I'd probably go in there and just reduce the power limit just a little bit. I mean, we are on maximum fans, you know. Or you could set the... Another thing you could do to help cut temps would be to set the max frame rate to 240, which is the maximum refresh rate of this display anyway, right? A little bit of spatial audio. I can kind of hear it's to my right-ish, but it's not as precise as what you get on the Blade series. Our teammates are just shooting each other right there in the corner over there. LOL, what? All right, so our goal in this is just to try to run around for a few minutes. And I just refreshed our counter. So we got some enemies over here. Aha, we got an assistant. What happened? Woo, we got a gold. Got a gold shield, I love it. So we've already gotten like 3 or 4 kills right at the beginning. This is awesome. This is a... If you can't tell, I'm like tracking targets and hitting targets really well today. I'm probably about to die now though. Okay. great, phenomenal gameplay experience, Apex Legends, but the performance was still very good. So, but if I wanted to reduce the temps, I would limit the frame rate. Look at this. We are getting the game to load on our secondary display instead of the main display. This is going to be an interesting problem. And it looks like it's opening in AMD Adrenalin software again. So, and FrameGen is something that absolutely boosts performance like crazy in those single player titles. All right, so we're running. Our CPU temps are spicy. 96 degrees. We're basically CPU thermal throttling is what I'm thinking right now. Pretty consistently right now. So 144 frames per second. Oh crap. Can I get a gun? Yeah. All right, well, our FPS is not as high as the i9 in this game. It seems to be about 20 FPS below the i9. So, and our temps are also just basically popping off a bit higher as well. So I think if you're a Warzone 2 player, I would recommend an i9 Intel CPU instead. You get, you know, 5 to 10% more performance, it seems like. And the temps are better with the i9 as well, at least in like the SCAR 18. You know what I'm curious about? Let's try turbo mode and see what the default power limit is. Our wattage is now 51 watts. Our FPS did drop significantly. Our fan noise is much quieter now. So our FPS went down about like 5 to 10 FPS, but our temps are better. Our fan noise is better. Our performance did take a noticeable hit though. So it's up to you if you think that's worth it or not. I think it probably would be worth it. We want full screen and everything is set to high. 16 by 10, that's good. So I'm curious what we're gonna get. Test Counter-Strike 2 LOL. Dude, yeah, the Counter-Strike 2 is gonna be super interesting if they release that. I've got like probably 2,000, 3,000 hours in CS GO and CS 1.6. I would definitely check out a new Counter-Strike game. So our FPS right now is phenomenal in the 400 to 500s range. I think that's a little less than the i9, but it's competitive with the i9 at least. I always had a thermal pad inside the chassis of my laptop to use the plate as an additional heat spreader too. Learned the trick on the MacBook Air back in 2020. Warner Dryer says, thank you, Gizmos of Tech. You just confirmed my decision. I was strongly looking into the Duo 16. Now I'm thinking of getting the Mech 17. Gotcha, man. Well, I'm happy to help. We'll have the equivalent of the Mech 17 for you. We'll have the equivalent of the Mech 17 review for you coming up here before the end of March. The XMG Neo 17 should be heading my way. The Duo 16 for the win. Yeah, I mean, especially, I do think this is pretty freaking awesome, especially if you have a good use case for the dual display. Like you're a streamer, you want to stream, you want to do Excel documents, you want to have multiple windows for like managing your files maybe, or use it for drawing or whatever. So we got 463.67. That is lower than the i9. The Intel i9 has been hitting between 512 on the SCAR 18 and about 560 on the GT77. So what have we found out about this Duo 16 that utilizes that Ryzen 9 7945HX CPU? Well, the performance is on par with the i9 13980HX in most of the games that we tested today. In Cinebench R23, it actually surpassed expectations and went above 34,000. 34,800 was our highest stock score when manual fans with raised power limits. We are going to be doing a detailed test between the i9 and this Ryzen 9 7945HX in the future here, coming up very soon. So be sure to subscribe and hit that notification bell if you don't want to miss out on that hands-on comparison between these two CPUs. We're going to do a ton of CPU benchmarks. That said, in the test that we did today, multi-core rendering is very similar between the i9 and this Ryzen 9 49. We're just gonna call this the Dragon Range, or the 45HX. We're gonna call it 45HX. It's a little easier to say. This laptop though, let's talk about the laptop ergonomics. In the lap, if you're gonna use your laptop in your lap a lot, I don't recommend this laptop because of this keyboard making it a little bit more awkward to type. And in general, this keyboard placement kind of pushes the laptop further away from you compared to where you normally would keep your keyboard and mouse hand. Now, this is a phenomenal amount of screen real estate. If you need to do work, let's say that you need to do work on spreadsheets. You could have a spreadsheet here, you could have a spreadsheet up here, transpose your numbers. That would be awesome. If you're a live streamer, you can play games on here, have your chat here and your stream window here, showing your stream data and all of that. Very multifunctional dual display here. So if you have a use case for this dual display, highly recommend this laptop for you. In general, we were running today in our settings. Let's talk about the high CPU temps we ran into. We ran into multiple games where we had super high CPU temps. In Dead Space 2, we had 100 degrees Celsius nonstop thermal throttling. And in addition, despite that thermal throttling and the higher level of performance we got from it, Dead Space 2 performance was below the i9. That was one of the games where we had the biggest difference between the i9 13980HX and this Ryzen 45HX. Okay, so in general, though, the performance was very similar between the i9 and the 7945HX in most of the games. And in a couple of the games, this even beat some of the other competition because basically the games were GPU bottlenecked. And in terms of raw CPU performance, it was good enough to keep us GPU bottlenecked. We never ran into any CPU bottlenecks. So it's just going to depend on the game that you're playing, whether or not you're going to ever become CPU bottlenecked anyway. Now, in those CPU bottlenecked games, I do anticipate the i9 chip to outperform this Ryzen 9 7945HX in the ballpark of 5 to 15%. It's or match it. It might be similar performance or just a little bit lower in this Ryzen 9 chip. The bigger question is, what's the battery life like with this Ryzen chip? Because it is on a smaller nanometer node, and our processing finished process, and it's gonna potentially reward us with better battery life. That said, we do have a mini LED display. Let's talk about the mini LED display. It's a QHD 240 hertz. We tested it at over 1,000 nits brightness, and just looking at the live stream right now, I can tell this thing is peaking my camera because it's so dang bright. It is a phenomenal display to game on, a phenomenal display to just use in general usage scenarios. Yeah, this display is not as bright or as vibrant, which is a little bit odd, right? Because this one's like a lot higher brightness than this one, which is a little weird. But we did try Dying Light 2, where you could put a game on the secondary display, and it was too buggy. It forced the integrated AMD GPU to turn on, and that ruined the game experience because it reduced the performance into nothing. So, or only like 10 FPS, which is not playable. That's going to be a driver bug issue, game optimization issue. I'm sure Asus and the Dying Light 2 devs just need to, maybe there's a driver that needs to be updated. Maybe we didn't update the driver. It could be my fault on that front. I'm not necessarily going to discredit them entirely for that, but it is a bummer that it didn't work out of the box. It looks like it would be super cool to play a lot of games. I wish a lot of games had dual display support like that to show maybe your inventory, or like maybe maybe this could be like your rear view camera in like a racing game, or like a rear cam, left and right mirrors, and then the front cam would be the main display. Stuff like that would be so cool on this laptop. In general, can I recommend this laptop? Yes, absolutely. The multi-core performance that we saw in Cinebench R23 was phenomenal. You're going to have extremely high levels of performance in productivity tasks. The display is phenomenal. It is very colorful, very bright, very vibrant, and competitive with the very best displays that money can buy. The keyboard is nice. The trackpad works well. It also doubles as a number pad. The trackpad, though, is this long, narrow thing, right? It's not really ergonomically ideal, and I think a lot of people would prefer to have a different trackpad or a larger trackpad. So that's another downside to this device. Now, portability wise, this thing is shockingly thin and shockingly portable, as everything folds up so well. And Windows Hello on it is also awesome. It logs me in no problem very quickly. And I mean, let's talk about ports for a second as well. The micro SD card slot is almost useless. I wish they had a full-size SD card slot. Why are they? I don't know why Asus is focusing so much on micro SD card slots, but the ports on this are basically the same thing as the Zephyrus G16, very similar to the Strix SCAR series, but it has a micro SD card slot as well. We don't have Thunderbolt 4 support or USB 4 support, though. That is a downside to the ports. If you're someone who needs Thunderbolt 4, you're going to have to go with an Intel laptop because it's not supported on AMD. Portability wise, this thing's going to fit in backpacks just fine. I think it weighs a little more than 6 pounds. And it feels very premium with an all metal build, a more premium. I think this is the most premium build that you can buy from Asus this year. It really feels premium and a little bit more rigid than your typical plasticky build that most Asus laptops have. So I like the build quality. I like the design. I wish it had one more USB-A, and I wish it had a USB 4 support, a USB-C that's a USB 4, because that's a higher throughput. And then I wish it had a full-size SD card slot. Those are my critiques there. And I really wish this thing had lower CPU temps, but you got to understand that we were running that thing with manually raised CPU power limits. If we were running it in turbofan mode, our CPU temps would have been way better. Like in Modern Wars, in Warzone 2, we switched from manual fan mode with the highest possible CPU power limits. We switched it down to turbo mode, and that dropped our power limit from we were doing 100 watts in dual GPU CPU load. Like total TDP was 230, 240. And then in turbo mode, it dropped the CPU wattage down to 55 watts. And that brought our temperatures way down on the CPU and GPU, down to I think it was in the 70s or 80s. And our FPS only went down about 5 to 10 FPS. So, and the fan noise also went way down. So I think that the turbo mode is probably the way you're going to want to game on this. And that a game like Dead Space also probably would have much better temperatures and a little bit less performance if we were in turbo mode. But, when we're trying to compete with the Intel and see which one's better between Ryzen and Intel, I want to run everything at maximum, see what the most performance we can possibly get. That just caused the temperatures to go a bit high, right? So if you manually tune this thing, you're going to end up with great temperatures and you're going to get good overall performance in games and excellent performance, maybe even better performance in multi-core rendering workloads. I can highly recommend this. I do think ergonomically, you're going to want to use this mainly on a table though. And you're going to want to use this wrist rest right in front of the laptop, and that makes using the keyboard so much better. So I think that if I could change this laptop, redesign it myself, if I had that option, what I would do is I would take this display, I would take this bottom bezel off this display, I would redesign this display, remove this bottom bezel, maybe make this display just a little bit narrower, okay? And then slide this keyboard deck. I would slide this keyboard deck back about 2 inches, because if you do that, that would make this that would make using this keyboard much better ergonomically in your lap. It would just make the whole experience better. And then in addition, I would try to redesign this keyboard to be just a little narrower so you can have a wider touchpad, or maybe another option is they could go with a Zephyrus Duo 18, and then you'd be able to get that wrist rest in there because it's a bigger display. You get a bigger touchpad because it's a bigger overall chassis. Maybe a Duo 18 would be the better ergonomic choice all around. I don't know. It's a thought. Asus, I would love to see a Zephyrus Duo 18. All right. Despite hitting 100 degrees Celsius inside of games and very high temps overall, the surface temps of the laptop were still good. The WASD keys were not that hot, and that was good. Now for battery life, Asus themselves says basically you're looking at between 3 to 5-6 hours, depending on how you optimize. For typical web browsing, you're probably looking at 4 hours of usage, okay? And that's going to depend on if you have the secondary screen enabled or if you're just using the main screen, what the brightness is. Mini LED screens use a lot of battery, so I wouldn't expect battery life to be that good on this. If you do a really good job optimizing, you might be able to get closer to 6 hours though. You know, turning off Bluetooth, maybe Wi-Fi disabled, depending on what you're doing, like just office tasks, I would expect maybe 6 to 7 hours would be possible with only one display rocking. It's not a laptop for me because it doesn't have the ports I want. And I do a lot of typing in my lap, so I can't use this type of ergonomics for typing in my lap. That's the deal breaker for me. So if they could make it so that I could have the ergonomics for typing in my lap with maybe like an 18-inch display, bigger touchpad, full-size SD card reader, 3 USB-As, I think I'd be on board. I think I would buy this. That's what it would take to make me want it, and definitely buy it. That's my review for now. That's my unboxing. That's my testing. I think it's a great laptop, and I can recommend it if you have the right use case for it, and you tune it correctly. The performance is going to be great overall. It's just not going to quite beat the i9. If you're primarily a gamer, I do think the i9 chip is probably going to be a little bit better choice this year. It's going to be a little higher performance based on the game testing we had today. We'll need to do more tests and more laptops. Maybe memory speed could affect things. You know, maybe different tuning things could make the performance a little bit better. But in general, based on the numbers I'm seeing, the CPU bound games, the dual load CPU bound games that we did today, the performance is very close to the i9, but it's not quite beating it. So that's kind of my summary right now. Woo! All right, see you guys in the next one. Brandon out.